Are you recording yet? You should be, because this is the best part.
Writer, producer, and director.
Persistence goes along with patience.
Professor of Media Arts and Design.
Opportunity to use my own imagination to realize
Rusty Greene.
character and dilemma and human emotion.
This is The Last Lap. Well, hello again, and welcome to The Last Lap. I'm Mia Brabham, and this is a 10-episode podcast where I interview my favorite, most interesting professors, mentors, and just super cool people during the last 10 days of my undergrad career here at JMU. Today, I'm here with Rusty Greene, professor of digital video and cinema in the School of Media Arts and Design. You guys don't understand, Rusty is seriously amazing, and he also gives the best life advice. I am so excited to have him here today. We're also joined by some hilarious friends and classmates from Rusty's directing and producing cinema class. Becca Malzahn, my main girl and partner in crime. Hannah Canetti, I like to call her the Amy Schumer / Chelsea Handler hybrid, and totally future famous comedian. And finally, Mark Antwistle, who is one of the kindest people I know, and also just has a really cool last name. I'm so excited to have everyone on today. Welcome, everyone, and without further ado, let's get this party started. Rusty Greene, Rustin Greene, actually. Woo. He's wearing green. We're slow clapping.
Cool.
Hannah and Mark were on a team for a movie, and Becca and I were on a team for a movie. So could you talk about the class and just talk about your experiences making an actual student film that was in a festival at the end of the semester?
Okay, well, I wrote and directed an entire movie, and I did everything. And I'm just kidding. Mark was on my team, and he edited and came to all the shoots. Anyways, go ahead. Your turn.
Yeah, so I worked with Hannah. I edited and produced it, so I was kind of in charge of Hannah, but it's cool.
Yeah, as much as anyone can be in charge of him.
Yeah.
I'm untamed.
Hannah's like a wild animal. What would her spirit animal
Miley
be?
Cyrus.
Canetti Untamed.
The next movie. But Becca.
Oh, come on.
I worked on a video with Mia and Tyler and Wells. It was awesome, but it was also really tiring because we filmed all at night and we were really
And in the
sleepless.
woods.
Yeah, and it was really
In the cold.
Isn't it called
In the dark. I have post-traumatic stress sometimes.
I don't remember anything from last semester. I was
We
too
blacked
tired.
out. Why are we here today? Rusty Greene, the King of Kings.
Something like that.
That's
Princess
quite a
Rusty.
name.
Okay, let's end this podcast right now. You can't do any better than that.
This is true. But my first question, how does it feel to be Rusty? Like, I just want to know how it feels.
Except for us. I'm just kidding.
Yes, tell us, Hannah.
Feels pretty good.
Well, having never been anybody else, I don't have much perspective. But I think that probably two things. One of them involves you guys, and that's being a teacher and the other involves being a dad and a husband, and so two pretty important parts of my life. And I'm not sure that I've ever really tried to think of it quite like this, but since you asked, I think there are some similarities in that I get a chance to take people with enormous passion, like the four of you, who have sometimes pretty clearly defined goals, and others not, but passion. And I'm in a wonderful position where I get to introduce you guys to the ultimate experience of creating and realizing a project, a movie, a piece of art, a piece of fiction, and everything that goes into creating that, including becoming, what did you say, brain dead at the end, and you don't remember last semester because of blacking out, and PTS, post-traumatic stress syndrome. Yeah, I mean, all of the stuff that goes along with that's an enormous privilege.
Is.
Speaking of that, you MC specifically SmadFest, and you're always great at it, because I've seen you in previous years before I was a senior and we made our project. But I had friends when we left that night, friends who were like, that is the most inspirational professor I've ever heard in my life. Like, friends who had never met you. And a lot of people in SMAT also dub you as like the most inspirational person. That's why we love you. So, where do you draw inspiration, and how do you keep that positivity?
The privilege of being able to be a teacher of seniors who are at the end of this chapter, at the end of this part of your lives, is an even more important responsibility. And I know that the industries and the fields and the creative endeavors you're wanting to pursue are not secure, and they depend an enormous amount on self-determination, self-reliance, and self-confidence. So I think it's important to remind people that making the movie, in the case of SMADFest, that's an important accomplishment. There's a whole lot that students learn there, and I imagine that the four of you sitting here realize more of what you have learned following that experience than during the experience, putting it into perspective. So the opportunity to remind people of the accomplishment, of the growth, of the learning is very important. I think it's important to hear.
So in general too, I feel like you had this radiance, this positivity about you.
Great skin.
So clear.
Clothes.
What lotion do you use? Face cream.
Well, I like what I do. I like what I do. So it's easy to stay positive when the people that I work with like what they do.
Yeah.
And I'm referring primarily to students.
How did you get to where you are now? Like, was there a turning point in your life where you're like, this is what I want to do, or like, this is the field that I love? Like, what's sort of like the story behind where you are now?
Yeah, it's a pretty simple. There is a turning point. There is a transition, and it's a pretty simple one. I spent almost 20 years as a television director, and then writer and producer, and. In the early 90s, when my wife and I had 2 children and we were living in Los Angeles, things in LA were just such that we didn't want to raise our children there. So that meant leaving, and that meant career change, because I didn't want to, going to New York would have had its own set of similar kinds of challenges that we didn't want our kids to be involved in. Chicago and other big media centers. So that meant career change. So it was, well, why don't I try this teaching thing?
Yeah.
So that's been 20-something years. So it was a simple decision. It wasn't it wasn't angst filled.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. So inspiring.
I love Southern California. I mean,
were you anywhere near Newport Beach? I lived there for a year.
Yeah, no, but
I didn't know that.
but I used to surf there. But
Wow.
Steve, what else can you do? He can magic.
Surf and film. Put that on your resume.
What do you do in your spare time?
Surf.
now put a VR rig on the nose of the board, and
That's
Oh, yeah.
I tried surfing once, but I almost got my head chopped off.
Do you have
I'm
any
gonna
other
die anyways.
secret talents we don't know about?
No.
I don't know.
There wouldn't be secret talents if you told
Can you
us.
speak some Italian? That's
Say something for us.
What it is?
Te adoro.
Wow. That sounded like, I feel like that was like a DiGiorno commercial. Like the thing that comes at the end.
I adore you.
Aww.
And that's as much as I know. But I think that's all that's necessary, is if you can ask for another beer and, hey baby, do you want a date? You can.
You're right. Literally, Kim, I can't even.
Low and slow.
Kim, people are
Low
dying.
and slow.
That's how she talks.
Big Kanye 2020.
Oh my gosh,
I'm
no.
voting.
Please help.
I hope it's Trump versus Kanye.
You used to act, didn't you? Or like, did
No,
you
not
dabble
really.
in it?
I was a theater major in college.
Yeah?
I did act as a college student, but never professionally, because I'm not an actor. And I got to do some fun projects, but
What was
I
your
realized
favorite?
Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead.
What?
That's a long name.
And Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are two characters in Hamlet, and they are the people who have been assigned to escort Hamlet from Denmark to England, to London, where he is to be killed. And so it's the story, it's an existential story about life and the meaning of life, and why are we doing what we're doing, and can we stop it if we want to stop it, and the inevitability. And it's a comedy, and although it doesn't sound like it.
I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah.
Well, so as far as film and directing and producing, what's your most favorite thing you've ever produced or worked on or just took a part in?
Well, my first job was working in public television in Minneapolis, St. Paul. And I had two jobs there. One, I was one of the staff directors, and the other job, and probably the more important job as far as they were concerned, was I was the lighting designer.
Oh, wow. That's really
And I got to do a couple of really exciting projects. One was to light an opera, and the other was the Performing Arts Company of the People's Republic of China came and did a tour of the United States, and it was sensational. And our television station got the contract to televise it for the network, for PBS. So they sent me to Wolf Trap to see the performance, and then I got to light that. That was very exciting.
Yeah.
I think the jobs that are most fulfilling to me were as a producer, not as a director.
Why is that?
I think it's because I made a change from directing commercials to mostly producing and then executive producing nonfiction things, and so it was the content. The commercials gave me a chance to play and have a good time and learn technique and try to figure out how to, tell a good story in a very short period of time. But there were two projects that I really, really enjoyed as a producer. One was a documentary about gangs living in Long Beach, California, and then another, which was highly regarded, and then another was an educational piece about the value of recycling, and that we used puppets for that. I didn't create the puppets. I didn't direct it. I was.
Were you one of the puppets?
I have always been a puppet. So those were probably the most exciting.
That's really cool. Okay, so you also, I was doing a little research. I found out things I never knew, which is just, I was like, I always thought you were cool, and then I was like, Rusty's actually really freaking cool. You manage your own video production company, and you also were the founder, if I say this right, the BEA, Festival of Media Arts, one of the founders.
I was one of them. Yeah.
Well, that's incredible. So what does it take to start something for all of us going out into the world, all these creative minds? What does it take to start something? And then how do you go about managing and keeping something going and keeping it good?
Well, in the interest of full disclosure, I was one of several people who created the BEA Festival of Media Arts.
Collaboration.
Oh yes. Oh sure. Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. You've heard the inspiration-perspiration equation, right? What is it? 10% inspiration and 90% perspiration. Have you ever heard that?
I dig it.
Yeah.
I dig it.
It's kind of gross.
So coming up with a good idea is hard. Convincing people that it is worth pursuing is often harder. And then that's the 10% part. And then making it happen is, I think people who are fabulous leaders have figured out that 90% perspiration part. And they can't do it themselves, right? You said collaboration right off the top. They can't do it themselves. It's articulating the value of that initiative, of that project, and convincing other people that it's worth them investing their energy, their passion, and time, and resources, and in the case of the festival, that was simple. There was a clear need. It got support immediately, and poof, it took off. So that was easy. Others, can be a little bit more challenging and take longer. I think patience is also very important, and that's one thing I don't have a lot of.
You guys patient? I'm not. I need to work on that.
I don't think I am either, unfortunately.
Yeah. I've yet to meet someone to say like one of their good qualities is patience.
Yeah.
I'm gonna look for that person now. Tell me about it.
But persistence goes along with patience. I mean,
Yes.
you can't just say I will wait. All things come to those who wait. Something like that that's not
stupid.
true. Persistence is really important. Sticking with it, and persistence and patience. Oof.
Good stuff. The 2 P's.
PP.
The PP. Okay, so I have one last question, and we're gonna move on to our speed round. I'm so excited, but we'll get to it in a second. So, in your opinion, I'm just very curious. What does it take to make a good film, a good work of art? And then going along with that, like if it lends to it, what goes into the making of a good life?
All right. So, what do you think is important?
Whoa!
What do you think? What's one thing that you think? And I'm going to ask all 4 of you. So 3 of you have an opportunity to think about this. What do you think is important for making a good film? Because you made a good film.
Oh wow!
Thanks.
Oh, my heart. Well, I think film, theater, everything's different, but I think specifically for film, and I guess any story really. I want to say like story is king, but more than ever, I'm finding now. Stories can be told many ways. A lot of stories repeat, but I think it's about the characters. So it's about who is living the story and how it's being told. I think is super important. But yeah, I don't know. I like unexpected, and I think it's important to connect to the human experience. Like that's always my thing. So it's like it can be the most basic storyline, but it's about what do people go through? What's timeless? What's universal? What are people always experiencing? That's in general. I do love scary movies and thrillers, and that's different. I guess it's still all the same.
Me's
But
made some good scary movies.
On the Run was definitely a thriller because I'm obsessed with horror movies, but it's a little bit different. But in general, the kind of work I look forward to making in my life would be more about like the human experience.
But it's still like the human experience. Like everyone gets scared, and that's like
true.
terrifying to watch those things.
I think it's like the emotions, like the emotional appeal. Like if you can like trigger that emotional appeal out of people, then like you've done something right.
Yeah.
These don't count as your answers, by the way. These are still reinforcing Mia's.
All right, go around.
I
Let's
don't
go.
remember exactly like what it takes to make a good film.
Yeah.
Well, first and foremost, me. I didn't need Mark.
Okay, now let's go to Mark.
I have a better answer.
I think it's all about the story, because if like you can watch something that's just a bunch of pretty pictures, but after a little while you're gonna lose your interest. And stories like I'm a storyteller. That's my thing. Like I love telling stories.
You have
So-
good stories.
I do have some good stories. They can all attest to that. But I think it's all about the story. You have to draw on their attention with the story.
I'm gonna go with a combo of everyone's answers and say like
I love
I think like
combos.
definitely like the story is like a main aspect because like if you don't have a good story like you don't have a good movie and like the whole like it has to connect to like the human experience and like the human emotions but also like you have to have like a good team to make that story come to life.
Yeah, like you can. I think you can never be comfortable with your talent level. I mean, like you always have to. Not that I'm saying I even have a talent level, but I'm just saying, like, I feel like there's so many people that are stuck in their ways, and, like, they won't let good influences come in.
So I'm in film adaptations right now. We sort of talk about this, but I mean, I've noticed in other movies, but we were specifically talking about Goodfellas and how it's such a good adaptation because of the tact of Scorsese. So how he's telling the story visually So with the cuts, it's very like with tracking shots. Like it's not just like a wide shot of them walking into the Copacabana. I'm saying that's so wrong, but the club. They're not walking to the club. It's like you see this world. Like he's bringing us through this world, and you can. It's cool about film because you can film a scene in so many different ways. But how you choose to tell the story lends itself to like how good the story is. So that involves like tact with the lighting. Like how are you gonna light this scene? How are the characters gonna interact with each other? How are you gonna shoot it? Because the lens is the eye. Like, it's what you're showing the viewer and what you choose to show the viewer. So it's biased, but that's the cool part about it. It's like, you get to choose, so.
They're, like, tactful measures using, like, wide shots to close-ups and what those mean behind it. Like, you use a close-up when you're trying to get, like, more of the emotion out, whereas, like, using a wide shot to show, like, more of the setting. Like, I think having that tell the story as well as just the story telling the story goes a long way, and then editing it on top of that.
Yeah, the story can change like 3 times throughout the entire thing because there's like the pre-production and then production and then you put it together and it can turn into something completely different.
Yeah.
Which it didn't, but...
Fix it in post. Just kidding.
Do not fix it in post.
Do not fix it in post.
Cry in post.
Follow that, Mark.
Any of you, have you ever turned on a movie that you've never seen before and turned off the volume? Why did you do it? Because I sometimes will recommend people do that as a learning exercise.
Somebody else had recommended it to me, and then I was on a 6-hour flight, and I didn't want to spend the money to watch a movie, so I just watched the guy in front of me's movie, and yeah.
One of the things that I think I think that's a good thing to do, by the way. Mm-hmm. And then to take that same movie and just listen to it and see which is more satisfying.
Wow.
There's a wonderful radio program, I think it's probably still going on, it's based on a British show called Desert Island Disc. And the idea is, if you're going to be stranded on a desert island, what are the 10 records that you would take with you? And then what is the one book that you would take if you if you could take one luxury item? What would it be? So I loved that show, and I couldn't today tell you what my 10 would be. People were given an opportunity to prepare for it. I couldn't tell you what it was, but it made me think of, if I had to choose between radio or audio now and video, radio and television, audio, I could only have one. Mm-hmm. What would it be? And I think in my heart I would probably say radio, but then I know that my life presents itself in ways that it's television. It's television. But if I had to make that choice, and I could only have one, I think I would probably pick audio-based entertainment and information. I think because of the opportunity for my own imagination to participate and contribute. And actually, that's one of the things that I really like about the movie-making business in all of its forms, is the opportunity to use my own imagination to realize that story about character and dilemma and human emotion that you were talking about, is try to find a way to do it.
Yeah. Woohoo! Shall we go to the speed round?
Yes.
It's okay. I'm gonna forewarn you. It's called the speed not so speed round. They're short, brief questions. Really fun, punchy, but
she says.
I say, but they're big questions, and you might have to think about them for a second. So I always encourage, go with your first instinct or your first thought, but if you have to think about it, and that's cool too. I just like to see people's reactions. So, are you ready?
Ready, aim, fire.
Favorite moment of undergrad?
Favorite moment of undergrad was when I was playing Rosencrantz. And Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. We were opening up a letter that came from the King of Denmark, which tells us our real mission, right? And I was the one that opened up the letter. And the way it's supposed to go is, open it up, see that it says, take Hamlet to the King of England and have him killed. look at Guildenstern, show him the letter, and we look at each other again, and then we share what it says, right? Well, this time, I open it up, look at it, and it said, "Eat shit and die." No expression. Anyway, and then we get working through that successfully on stage was my favorite experience of undergraduate life. Eat shit and die. I couldn't warn him. I couldn't warn him. I had to show him, and brilliant.
Okay, your favorite moment at JMU?
I think my favorite moment at JMU, it gets to repeat itself. And it is the SMADFest experience.
I love that. My favorite moment gets to repeat itself. Yeah. That's one for the books.
What's your yearbook?
That's one for the books. All right, your heart song. I might have to explain this. I love the reaction. So your heart song. This is so important. Everyone should know their heart songs. You guys have to think about this. A heart song is not your favorite song. It's you as a song. It's like your spirit song.
So I'm going to say that the Berlioz Requiem Mass. I heard it in London, in St. Paul's Cathedral, performed by the London Symphony Orchestra. Almost instantly, when the conductor, came down with the first downbeat, my life was in his and their hands.
Wow, that's powerful.
It was enormous. It was enormous.
That reminds me of one of my favorite quotes by Steve Jobs, and it's, "I want to stop the world in its tracks." That's what that song was. Anyway, your cry song. So a song you cried to. What does Rusty cry to?
It's another classical piece. I heard it first at a time when I was feeling a need for emotional support and I wasn't getting it. And this song came on. And again, it was one of those moments. Mm-hmm. Now, when I hear it, and there are sometimes when I will put it on, it's because I was able to get that stuff out. Mm-hmm. But it helps me to allow emotion to just be there instead of trying to suppress it or overcome it or just allow it to happen.
Wow. That was also so good. Rusty's killing it. Okay, how do you overcome fear?
I don't know that I do. If I'm afraid of something, that doesn't mean that I hide sometimes. But I just overcome fear. I don't know. I do. I just gotta know that you're afraid and go on. I think that's an excellent motivator. Seriously, fear. And I'm not talking about a cliff that's 180 feet down into burning coals. I don't mean that. I mean finding ways to move forward with it.
Nice. Okay, if you weren't a professor at JMU, what would you be?
I ask myself that question a lot because there will come a time when I am no longer a JMU professor. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
No.
So I think I will become a weaver. I am a weaver. I'm a baby weaver. I'm not a
really
intense weaver. I've got a good loom.
Wait, seriously?
Mm-hmm. But I don't do it very much because it takes a lot of time.
Becca came up with this. If you could win an award for anything, what would you want to win?
I would love to have an Academy Award. It would be dishonest to say that I would not want that. Well, I've had 2 really wonderful awards as a teacher, and those meant a whole lot to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And who would you thank in your acceptance?
Who would I thank?
Yes.
Oh, I would thank the students at 405.
Amazing. From fall semester?
From which year?
2015?
From the fall of 2015.
Amazing. Wow. I would too.
When were you in that class?
Was it fall 2015?
I think.
Whoa. Whoa.
That's such a coincidence.
Did you mean us? Okay, and the final question. I'm excited. Are you excited?
You can tell by the palpitations.
All right. What is your one piece of advice for every college student going out into the world in one word only?
One word?
In one word only. It's doable.
Perspiration.
Money.
Every professor has something different, and it's so awesome.
Really?
Yeah.
Perspective. Because you're beginning. And you have to keep that in perspective, regardless of how much an individual can contribute immediately. It's just the beginning. Mm. And you just have to keep that in perspective, that what you have to offer is needed. It just may not be needed the way that you want it to be needed at the time you want it to be needed.
Boom. Bravo. Thanks for coming out today. Y'all are great. Thank you, Rusty, for coming. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you learned something new today, friends. Subscribe for more podcasts and other stories and video content. If you're listening on YouTube or Facebook, leave a comment to answer any of the takeaway questions listed in the description, respond to any of the topics we talked about today, or even start your own. I promise to read them. They're really fun to read, and they're super interesting. Finally, find me on Twitter and Instagram at yourstruly Mia_, and let's be friends. Tune into next episode with Tom O'Connor, screenwriting professor and JMUNLA director. He's really good at Shakespeare. You won't be disappointed. Thanks again for listening, and remember, the best learning happens inside and outside the classroom. This is The Last Slap, and until next episode, gotta run. The Last Slap is produced and edited by Mia Brabham, music by Brian Kim.